Welcome back to the Seth and Chris Show. I'm Seth Leibson. He is Chris Buskirk. This fine Tuesday, September 12th, 2017. Delight to welcome back to the show one of my favorite people in the whole world, one of my best friends and our regular guest host, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, founder and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, author of A Battle for the Soul of Islam, An American Muslim Patriot's Fight to Save His Faith. We couldn't do it yesterday, but on these dates with harrowing memories, 9/11, 9/12. I wanted to catch up with Dr. Jasser. Doctor, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Seth. It's always great to be with you and Chris.
Is it easier to be on that side of the mic or this side? You've done both now for a lot of times. Is it easier to be a guest or so? I think it's easier to be a guest, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think a guest is easier because I'm not driving. I'm sitting in the back seat. You're driving the ship.
Unlike in your profession of medicine, though, it's probably easier to be a doctor than a patient.
That's true.
given the exams you put me through,
That's true.
It doesn't work uniformly around the professions. Dr. Jasser, I asked you this morning if you would come on and talk to us a little bit. This is a short segment. We'll have a longer one after the break. What have we gotten right? What have we gotten wrong in the last 16 years?
Well, on the good news side, we finally have a president that is allowing the Department of Defense to decimate those who want to kill us and to make ISIS into the annals of history as being the genocidal Islamist terrorists that they are, and we're on the way to victory in Raqqa and elsewhere. But on the bad side is we've seen this play before. The whack-a-mole program of the military coming to our salvation every time a terror group comes up, be it Al-Qaeda, Islamic Jihad, now ISIS. They'll keep coming back, regenerating under different names, different forms of their caliphate, until we start to get into the biggest, what I think is the main ideological conflict globally of the 21st century, which is political Islam. And, unfortunately, we've seen President Trump start to behave differently than he did in the campaign.
There's a lot of talk about this now. I was going to ask you about it. Go with it. I shouldn't have even interrupted. You're on it. Go with it.
No problem. Yeah, in the past few weeks, we saw Sebastian Gorka leave after he said, listen, I left because the speech on Afghanistan was devoid of the conflict of Islamism and the Islamic identity issue that we're fighting. And then yesterday's comments on 9/11 were particularly obvious from Vice President Pence and President Trump to be absent any description of the terrorists as being Islamic or Islamist. And we're seeing sort of the same old Bush-Obama benevolence. And today, President Trump is welcoming in the head of Malaysia into the White House, and there's no comment about all of the human rights abuses in their countries, et cetera. So we almost seem to be focusing back on the short-term a war of 3 to 6 months where the Saudis and others are our allies versus the long-term war where these dictatorships are cauldrons of radical Islam that we need to call out as Islamic if we're going to actually treat the disease.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that, the treatment of the disease, the use of the terminology, and what you often refer to as the intellectual battle, which we've never really taken on. I was hoping, I had great hopes. Would you say a word about the forgotten intellectual battle that's so important to your perspective?
Yeah, we have the reason people said, I had a number of Trump supporters respond to me and say, well, Zuhdi, what difference does it make what we call it? He's killing ISIS. You're not going to solve this militarily. If you want to give oxygen to the intellectual people like me at the head of the spear, we need to have oxygen by Americans in the West taking sides within the House of Islam with reformers against the theocrats. Americans get the battle against theocracy, and President Trump in the campaign was giving us oxygen. He said he wanted to have a commission on radical Islam. Today, the Supreme Court said they were going to uphold his ban so he could have that 90-day pause. Well, if he's going to uphold that ban and he wins the case October 10th, the Supreme Court, what is he going to do in that 90 days? I would hope it would be to convene that commission so we start to vet refugees against that ideology. Otherwise, we're wasting our time if we don't start talking about the Islamist ideologues that want to kill us and come in here covertly as not part of a terror group, but covertly as part of an insurgency.
That's what I want to pick up on the other side of the break, Dr. Jasser. I'd love to do that. And I want to talk also about what I think is a totally overinflated concern about the use of the phrase radical Islam. We'll do that on the other side of this break with Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, author of A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim Patriot's Fight to Save His Faith. His website, aifdemocracy.org. We'll be right back. All right, so I'm sorry to report this has been bad music hour. It wasn't my choice, but that's okay. It's great guest hour as well. We have Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. Chris, hold on. We have Dr. Zuhdi Jasser with us. He is the president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, author of a great book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, and an American Muslim Patriot's Fight to Save His Faith. Dr. Jasser, on the break, Chris was reminding me, October 31st is Reformation Day, so if you want to nail some theses to some mosques, that would be the day to do it.
That's a great idea. You know, we have Constitution Day coming up, I think September 17th, and then to be followed by Reformation. What a perfect month-to-month juxtaposition of our entire mission.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. We
already pinned them on a couple mosques, our Muslim Reform Movement declaration, so we will take it to more.
Wonderful. I want to return to this issue that we were talking about in the other in the previous segment, Dr. Jasser, of the phraseology of radical Islam and why I think the worry about it is overblown. But before that, you just came back from a trip to Israel. Did you want to make a mention of that?
Oh yeah, we serve on the board of the American Conservative Union, and as you know, spoken at CPAC for 4 years now. And so they had their first mission to Israel, and 4 of us from the board went, along with some noted conservatives, Katie Pavlich, Lisa Deftari, and a number of others. It was just very eye-opening. We had a whirlwind 4 days, 3 different meetings at the Knesset. We met with Prime Minister Netanyahu's communication director, met with some leaders from the Arabic community, from the judiciary, from the economic sector. So a lot to say there, but I can tell you that, we have a lot to learn from them on the security issues. I think it's amazing. We go through a lot of mental gymnastics about what terms to use or not use, and it's just absurd when you talk to them. They're like, listen, we've been dealing with radical Islamic groups for many years, for their almost 70 years now, and their security narrative is a lot clearer about what the threat is and how to determine which groups are with them versus which are against them. They certainly, as a conservative, we had a lot to teach them, if you will, about free markets versus socialist systems, about originalists in the Constitution versus their extraordinarily activist judiciary, which I learned about. So there's a lot of differences, but I can tell you from the security perspective, Prime Minister Netanyahu has been calling out radical Islam and the war we're fighting for years in speeches, and I only wish our leadership would do the same.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. We were reminded today, I think it was an op-ed, I don't remember where it was published, I read somewhere, but we're reminded, the enemy they face, who hates us too, the scenes on 9/11 16 years ago of Palestinians celebrating in the streets of not only parts of East Jerusalem, but in the West Bank should have been a reminder. The Palestinian Authority is still paying families of terrorists a stipend for acting out terrorist acts. Money Americans send to the Palestinian Authority is being used to go to terrorist families. The talk about gymnastics.
Oh, we met with a lady that her name escapes me right now, but she's a hero. She's been suing in New York federal court the NGOs and others that had been paying for these families, and also to get money from the Palestinian Authority. And she won an award of $250 million. And, oh, by the way, it was reduced to $5 million by the State Department.
Of course.
Our State Department.
Of course.
For supposed stability to the PA that we continue to give hundreds of millions of dollars to. So, and now she has it under appeal, et cetera. But the bottom line is that there are a lot of heroic people doing things to stop what the Arabists in the State Department and others are doing, in contradiction to logic.
Good. Let's go back to the phrase radical Islam, Dr. Jasser, because I've never thought of it, and I'm not a Muslim, as are you, but I just never thought that it was what Barack Obama said. I mean, he said we should not use the phrase because it is offensive. I always thought it was a wonderful phrase because it was actually adjectival, descriptive, and separated itself from Islam. It was a distinction. It was not painting all of Islam or all Muslims with the same brush, but actually quite the opposite. It was a way to make a distinction at the same time knowing what the heck our enemy was or who the heck our enemy was and what their motivation was. I don't know if I'm obtuse, I don't know if I'm insensitive, or I don't know if I'm just spectacularly right.
Seth, you're just rational. I mean, when we get together in Muslim gatherings and speak in Arabic, when they're talking in Arabic in the language, they talk about Islamiyin, the Islamist movements, the Islamic Republic of Iran, of Pakistan. They call themselves Islamic republics and yet do heinous crimes against humanity in the name of their Islamic State. So all I can tell you is that the drive behind that, as much as President Obama mentioned it, and so did President Bush and others, saying that they want to protect American Muslims, I guarantee you the biggest obstacle is usually those foreign governments. They're the ones who drive this countering violent extremism narrative instead of countering violent Islamism, because they realize that they're running open-air prisons as governments, and they want to call it Islamic. The Saudi royal family wants to separate themselves from the radical terrorists, and they don't want the terrorists called Islamists because all of a sudden then the free world will start to connect ISIS to the Saudi government. We'll start to connect Hezbollah to the Iranian Islamic Republic. And once we start making those connections, all of a sudden our allies that Obama wanted to hand, or did hand $150 billion to Iran's Islamic Republic, will start to say, wait a minute, Hezbollah is the same thing. Why are we calling them terrorists, but we're not calling the Iranian government terrorists, which they are?
Yeah, right. You're calling this right. It's somehow separating the gunpowder from the bullet, and it just makes no sense.
Exactly. So I hope we have however many years of a Trump administration left, at least 3, if not more. I hope, and I hope that we begin to start to effectuate what real policy of reform and a commission on radical Islam would be. Convene some members of that commission to begin to lead what would be, as we had a committee on the present danger in the Cold War that laid out what we were fighting, directed the U.S. Information Agency to begin to do information ops. We are so far behind. I mean, yesterday I was looking at a clip on memory from Egyptian television where Egyptian television that we give billions of dollars to their government is having this anchor laughing at the wailing of Americans on 9/11 about how we are wailing about a terror act from 16 years ago, when in fact he was saying that we are to blame for the Burmese genocide against Muslims, for all these other things. So these narratives are still playing out every day against us, and we are completely on the defense with no offense in the Muslim world.
Yeah, there's a lot of swamps that need clearing, not just in D.C., but I hope they're not returning to a status quo ante with that change in rhetoric you outlined, something Chris and I have been concerned about and talking about as well. Well, you're a hero to us. Every time I have you on, Zuhdi, my email and Twitter feed gets flooded with people telling me how much of a hero you are to them, but no more so than you are to me. Thank you for all you do and for joining us for a few moments today.
Anytime. God bless us.
Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, founder and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, author, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim patriot's fight to save his faith. Visit his website, aifdemocracy.org, aifdemocracy.org.